Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Credit Report webinar. I hope that you can hear us all right here. My name is Olga Filev, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. We also have Liz Tredo with us, and she will take us through the credit reporting process. So, Liz, thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. This is Liz. Just to quickly introduce myself, I've been with Checkpoint for about 4.5 years now, working in different levels of operations and compliance. So throughout the years, I have come across a lot of, I would say, random questions regarding the credit report, and that's how this idea came about. We decided that why not create a venue to answer some of these questions, and especially the more common ones. So the purpose of today's webinar is to give you a more well-rounded view of the credit report that will help you make the best decisions in your job setting and for the overall health of your business.
So before we start the presentation, a couple of points. This presentation will not have an open mic. However, we do encourage questions, and you should have a question box where you could type your question and submit, and we will allow some time at the end where we could address all the questions that we receive. If by any chance we run out of time and your question was not answered, make sure to reach out to us over the phone or via email, and we will also try to address that possibly through some other venue. So going forward, some of the things that we are going to cover today is what is in the credit report and some of the credit score points, and there are different models, so we're not going to cover them all today. We will focus mostly on the FICO score. Also, the credit report discrepancies and how mistakes get on the credit report and how it can be fixed. Nowadays, there's more tools available through different laws and regulations that make it easier how you can actually fix certain things that are not correct on the credit report. Also, Liz will cover Checkpoint credit report features, some of the other things, additional tools that we have for you to use, and questions and answers. So quick overview of what a credit report tells us. Types of credit used, length of time accounts have been open, whether bills have been paid on time or not, how much credit has been used, how much is available, whether an individual is seeking new credit sources. Basically, a broader view of credit history and financial behavior and financial capacity of an individual. And if you look at the primary data types, even though each credit reporting agency formats their reports in a different way, they compile it differently, all credit reporting contains basically the same categories of information, and that would be identifying information such as name, address, date of birth, social security number, also trade line information, which is probably the bulk of a credit report, and these are the credit accounts that lenders report on each account that is established. Inquiries is another category, and we will cover in a little bit why that is an important section of a credit report. Also, public records that different entities report to the credit bureaus as well. Primary data sources, it's a long list. I think that looking at the credit report, we have seen at least one of these. Most popular would probably be credit cards because it's very easy to obtain. Also, judgments, tax liens, bankruptcies, also utility companies, which probably is very helpful for the nature of business that property managers are. You can see whether somebody defaulted on their utility bills. So a lot of institutions report to credit bureaus, which can give you a really well-rounded idea about the individual's financial state. And now Liz is going to cover each of those categories in more depth. So we will start with consumer identifying information and how to find that information on the credit report.
Okay, as Olga mentioned previously, regardless of what source you received the credit report from, whether it was Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, and the format, whether it was from Checkpoint or myfreecreditreport.com, all credit reports will have personal identifying information, such as your name, your social security number, your date of birth, and even employment information, all of which is used to identify you. So you have a section on this particular credit report, and I'm going to highlight it for you here. So you have this section here where it has the applicant, and this is the information that was supplied by the applicant that was entered into Checkpoint's system. So this is their social, their date of birth, and then beneath that you have a comparison of what the credit bureau has on file for this individual. So it looks like the social is a match, the date of birth is a match, and then there are some different aliases that are associated with this person. Beneath that, you're also going to see what's called a Social Security fraud search. In other words, it's just a red flag alert letting you know if there's an address discrepancy on file. And it's something to pay attention to because it could be an indicator of identity theft, not necessarily the case, but just something to take into account when it does pop up. Is you want to know why this particular address doesn't appear, is not something that's been reported to the credit bureau before. So continuing with identifying information,
And we are having a highlighter that is acting up.
yes, our highlighter's gone wild. But it will continue. So we have another, a bit more of identifying information. There's also an address comparison. So up top you have the address that was provided by the applicant, which is 1234 Main Street, and then the credit report will return up to 3 addresses that are associated with the applicant. Next to that, you'll also get a reported date frame. So it might be a useful tool for you to compare the dates and the addresses that came back on the application to what's on the credit report. So there's also a section for employment comparison. This section will report employers that have reported this applicant or consumer as somebody who works for them. One of the misconceptions or misperceptions about the employment is that the current employer will always be listed here, and that's not always the case. So if the consumer applicant works for a smaller business, it's possible that they don't report that information to the credit bureau, so it may not be registered as their employer on the report. Another way that employment information can find its way onto the credit report is through collection agencies who are looking for the consumer. Through their efforts, they might establish an employer for the consumer, and then that information, they'll place that information on the credit report as well. Next slide touches on the trade line information, which, as Olga mentioned, is the bulk of the credit report. This is the primary reason that most of us are wanting to get access to the credit report, because we want to see the types of accounts that have been opened and what lenders are reporting on the applicant. So they report the type of account, you have the creditor's information, the opening date, that the account was opened. It also lets you know beneath the opening date how many months this account has been reviewed by the credit bureau. So have they, how many months has the creditor reported a status on this account? For Big Store creditor, they have reported it for 99 months. You're also given the last reported date. So the last time that the agency or the creditor reported to the bureau is September of 2010. And beneath that, it gives you the date of last activity, so the last time that the account was used. we're going from left to right here, so you're also provided with the high credit amount, which would be either the initial balance of the account or the highest balance that has ever been placed on this particular account. So you're also provided with the current balance, just to let you know where the account stands. The bottom trade line is an auto loan, and we can see that the initial balance was about $20,000, and it's now been reduced to $17,000. So at least it's not going up. Continuing with the trade line information, you also are going to be able to see if there's a past due amount on this account. And next to the past due amount, it will break down for you how many times the account has been past due. So the number of times it's been 30 days past due, the number of times it's been 60 or 90 and plus. These two accounts are as agreed, and as you can see, there's no historical delinquent information available for this account. So it's also important and useful for you to know what type of account this is. There are different types, which Olga will go into a little more detail later, but this top account is REV, which stands for revolving, and beneath that it gives you the terms of account. So if it's an installment account, which we'll also go into more detail later, then there might be terms associated with it. If it's a credit card, or I'm sorry, a car loan would be an installment, and there might be a period of time. The terms are set up 72 months to pay off the car loan, and then the payment amount would be listed beneath that. The most sought after piece of information would probably be what is the status of this account. So the present status on these two are as agreed, which is satisfactory. It means that they're paying as their contractual obligations. So you would see different statuses listed here. We have a few that we've actually put on this slide. Some of the more common ones would be as agreed, paid, whether it's a closed account, whether it's an active, been settled, if it's a collection account, foreclosure, repossession, or a charge-off. And then to the very left you have this key. So it goes down, it says ECOA. And a lot of people wonder what that means. It is an acronym for the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which does require the credit reporting agency to disclose the relationship between the consumer and this account. So the consumer's relationship is identified by a B, and Olga will also go into detail with this, but B stands for borrower. So the consumer is the borrower with this account. Another useful tool to take into account when looking at the credit report is that I think with time, credit reports have done a lot to improve in their overall quality of reporting. So different laws have also enabled that to happen, and one of the things that has improved is the remarks that are available on the credit report. So the top account that we're showing here is an education loan. We can see under the type that it's an EDU, stands for education. There are some terms, 120, that I'm assuming that that's months. So for under the remarks, it indicates that this is a student loan payment that has been deferred. So the status lists that it's an account that is paid as agreed, and that's because the arrangements have been made for it to be postponed until a later date, and by not paying it, they are actually meeting their contractual liability. The account beneath that shows an example of an account where the subscriber is reporting that a dispute has been resolved and the consumer disagrees. So after, again, later in the conversation, we'll be touching on consumer disputes and how to fix information inaccuracies on your credit report. In this situation, the subscriber or the creditor reports that the dispute has been resolved, but the consumer still disagrees with the outcome. A few more common remarks that you might see would be in regards to medical accounts. So the status of this top account tells us that it's a collection account. It's been sent to collections. And the remarks tells us that the original creditor is a medical account. Anytime that the account is in collections, you should be able to see the remarks, and it will indicate who the original creditor was. If it was a utility, if it was a credit card, then it's going to be listed as who the original creditor is. One thing to note about medical accounts, the FACTA, which is Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act, does prohibit the disclosure of the doctor's name or the medical facility. So it has to do with personal privacy, and you won't be able to find that information. It will just give you a generic medical account. And then the final remark that we wanted to share with you, because of the nature of our business, would be remarks relating to residential rental, which is a more recent trend that we're seeing on credit reports, and obviously very helpful for our industry to know what a person's payment behavior was with their rental. It actually can help out an individual who might not have a very lengthy credit history or has what's called a thin file with not very many trade lines on it. If you're able to see that they have a residential rental where they were paying as agreed, then it could be a huge indicator in the approval process. This account unfortunately does not show that it's agreed. This has actually been sent to collections, but it again is just as useful because you have an idea of the payment behavior that the applicant could continue in the future.
So looking at the inquiries and the relationship of the credit line per Equal Credit Opportunity Act, as Liz has mentioned, the lenders or creditors have to disclose the relationship of the credit line to the borrower or to the individual. So looking at some of these codes, for example, A would stand for authorized user of shared account, where the individual is not responsible for the account. They have access to it, but they're not responsible to repay that. B would be for borrower or the responsible party for the credit line, and it's individual account for sole use of consumer. C and J are relative to one another. That means that it's a joint account and both individuals are equally liable for the credit line. We will also have this list available on our website if you would like to reference to it afterwards, or if you would like to have a copy of it for you and create a cheat sheet for future reference. I do want to mention the last three. For example, T, relationship with account terminated. It could be in case where the creditor terminated the relationship for whatever reason that they found valid, or if the borrower decided to close it out themselves. Also, U, sometimes we see that where it is unknown, so it was not reported to the credit bureau, the relationship. And also X, which is important to know, because that means that the person has deceased. And if you're receiving that credit report, it's possible that it is identity theft situation. Types of account. If we look at the type of an account, there's a number of different codes. It doesn't always appear the same on every credit report. It depends on the furnishing party and what they use, but in general, this is what the letters standing for. C would be for line of credit, I for installment payments, such as the auto loan, or if somebody bought a furniture and they're financing it and they're making installment payments. So that means that the amount is set and the payment is set for a certain amount of month. M for mortgage. O would be for open accounts, such, for example, American Express is a good example. And R is for revolving, which mostly would be related to credit cards. In this case, our credit report, for example, for revolving, it would say REV, or for auto, it will say auto. So it gives you more information. However, if you ever come across the credit report that comes straight from the credit bureau, most likely it will have the short acronyms like that. So looking at public records section, that courts and different entities also report to credit bureaus, and credit reporting agencies also collect public record information from state and county courts and information on overdue debt from collection agencies. Public record information includes bankruptcies, foreclosures, suits, wage attachments, liens, and judgments. And as you can see the court name where it was obtained from, the judgment, who reports it. It's reported by Experian in this case. Also, at the reference, you can see the judgment information, when it was filed and who it was filed by. The status, that is an important section because it says not satisfied and sometimes it says satisfied. So that would play a role in the decision that you're making, whether it's going to be adverse action or not. Also, you can see the bankruptcy information and whether it was discharged or not. So all of this could be really helpful in your process when you're making a decision. Let's look at how long it will remain on somebody's file. So bankruptcies, for example, Chapter 7, 11, and 12 will remain on individual's credit report for 10 years. Bankruptcy Chapter 13 will remain for only 7 years, and also liens that are paid will be on the credit report for 7 years. However, liens that are not paid will be on the credit report for as long as 15 years. Judgments will remain on the credit report for 7 years. And if you look at trade lines, delinquencies, collections, charge-off, that will also be on individual's credit report for 7 years. So now Liz will cover the importance of credit profile report and inquiries.
So the inquiries section of the credit report, generally you'll see it towards the end of the credit report, though again it can vary depending on the source of the credit report. But it's a section that I think should not be overlooked because it can reveal a lot or new information about where the applicant is seeking new credit sources, and also if they have been applying for residential rentals around the same time frame that they apply for your property or your listing. You're going to be able to see the name of the subscriber or the creditor that has requested the inquiry, the date of the inquiry, the kind of business of the creditor, and then also the ECOA code, which again is required to identify the relationship between your applicant and the inquiry that appears on the credit report. So sometimes the reason that when it can be most useful is if you're running a joint report where you have husband and wife and the credit report is combined, so to be able to differentiate between what the primary applicant would be the borrower, the co-applicant on the report would be the co-borrower. So again, this particular section is useful because you are able to see if maybe within the past 30 days or so there has been a lot of activity in terms of seeking new credit and what type of credit is it that they're seeking, and if there have been other residential type of inquiries for residential screening, why have they not gone through? One thing to note about inquiries is that they will remain on your credit file for 2 years. So another section of the credit report with a lot of relevance comes towards the end is the section for repository remarks and alerts. Basically, this is a section that allows for the credit bureau to place their own type of remark on the consumer's credit report. The most common would be a message relating to the Social Security number that was entered. So this message from Experian states that the SSN, Social Security number entered, matches what the credit bureau has on file. It also allows for consumers to place statements on the credit report. As many of you probably know, there's been an increase in the number of identity theft cases, and it's available if you are a victim of identity theft. It's available and encourage that you place a statement such as the one we have up here to let other lenders, creditors know that you have been a victim of identity theft, so there's a possibility that accounts could have been opened without your consent or in your name. And then at the very end of the credit report, you get what's called submission results, which is more of a timestamp just to let you know when, at what time the inquiry was pulled, and also to give you the results. Was a record found, or was a record not found? So I am going to highlight this section. I hope my highlighter doesn't go wild again. But you have this section here where it says result, record found. And that means that the credit bureau has a particular, something was found that matches your applicant or consumer's information. At times it might say no record was found, and the credit report will come back blank, so to speak. So no record found just means that there's no credit history established, and in some cases that's normal behavior. Maybe it's an applicant that's fairly young or possibly new to the country, so they have not established any credit yet. But it all plays into this scenario and the situation. If this is an applicant who has disclosed that they have credit or some sort of history and it comes back as no record found, then it would suggest that you look into it a little further, verify that the information that you entered is correct, so that you are able to get the most accurate results back, or information might be withheld from the applicant or consumer that is resulting in a no record coming back. Okay, so now we have, let's see, we have another section of the credit report, and this section is one that may or may not appear on your credit report, just depending on whatever the features are. Credit scores are generally an optional feature of the credit report, so I'm going to let Olga go into credit scores.
So what does a credit score do or show us? It really is a snapshot of a credit risk that a lender or a credit grantor is looking at, and it's helpful to understand fast of where the individual stands with their credit behavior or financial responsibility. And credit scores give lenders fast, objective measurement of the credit risk. A credit report reveals many aspects of applicants' activity, and all pieces of information are or should be consistently relevant. So again, the credit score is something that takes into consideration the below mentioned things such as the proportion of balances, whether the credit is high or how often it is used, amount owed, length of time of the accounts, and level of delinquencies on the accounts. What it does not take in consideration is gender, marital status, and things like that that would be considered discriminatory for taking in consideration when granting credit. So most of the credit scores are called FICO because the most widely used credit score is FICO score. That means that there are other credit models that are used nowadays, and FICO score is probably not the best model nowadays because it doesn't take in consideration the things that took place in the last 5 years where many people went through foreclosures, and with the real estate market going down, a lot of behavior has changed, so FICO model is not taking that into consideration. We will not go into depth of the credit score today. We'll actually have a separate webinar for that, and we will see and look at different scoring models and understand what would be a better model. So let's see. Let's take a look at how the score actually breaks down on individuals' credit report. It takes in consideration mostly the payment history and whether the payments are made on time or how many late payments are there. That is 35% of how it will affect somebody's credit score. Also, amount owed is also affecting somebody's credit score by 30%. So if you look at it, 35 and 30, that is 65% of individuals' credit score will depend on the amount that they owe and also payment history. So basically, are they maxed out and what is their behavior? Are they able to make all the payments that they have agreed to? Also, you look at the length of credit history. So the credit score takes in consideration how long has this individual, how long has it been since they established their credit history. So that is about 15% of what contributes into their credit score. Also, 10% is new credit, whether an individual is obtaining new credit, that will affect their credit score as well. And types of credit in use. What kind of accounts? Is it a credit card? Is it a auto loan? Is it a mortgage? Credit cards normally would affect somebody's credit score greater than or more than, let's say, an auto loan, for example. So it looks like it breaks down pretty evenly according to the credit bureau. They are saying that about 20% of population have credit score below 620, about 20% have a credit score between 620 and 690, and 20% between 690 and 740, 20% between 740 and 780, and 20% above 780. I'm not sure if this information is still correct. I believe this is as of 2009. I'm not sure if there's still 20% of population that has credit score above 780, but maybe it is because credit bureaus know best. So right now we're going to go ahead and take a poll, and the question for the poll is, when a credit report is requested for a residential rental, what type of inquiry is placed on the consumer's file? Is it a soft inquiry where they don't lose a lot of points or not at all? Or is it a hard inquiry where their credit score is actually affected? So we're going to open up a poll and go ahead and choose your answer and click submit. We'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, our poll is growing. Okay, so we have 20 seconds left. Make sure that you've answered your question. Okay, looks like our results are ready, right? Or is it still going? Okay, so we closed the poll, and these are the answers. So 33% of you think that it is a hard inquiry where points are charged or the credit score will be affected negatively, and 67% of you think that it is a soft inquiry and the credit score will not be affected. Let's see what the right answer is. The right answer is, it is a soft inquiry, and that means that there is no effect on the consumer's credit score, which is good news, because when somebody is going and applying to different places, it's good to know that your score is not affected. Also, when somebody is applying for employment and their credit history is obtained, that will also not affect them negatively, and it is also a soft inquiry. So credit scores and inquiries, how do inquiries affect scores? And as you just answered a question, when you're applying for a rental property or when you're looking for a new job, that will not affect somebody's credit score in a negative way. So that means that not all inquiries are related to credit risk, and inquiries don't affect scores that much. Many kinds of inquiries aren't counted at all, as we just covered, and score looks for rate shopping and basically assessing the risk, whether somebody's obtaining more credit obligation. Closing accounts will not raise the score. It might even lower it, actually. However, obtaining new credit will definitely affect somebody's credit score in a negative way. And it takes about 3 to 6 months to get the score back up. Usually, depending on what kind of credit line it is, it could be even 6 to 12 months.
Just to add to what rate shopping is, what the scoring FICO score model does is it looks at the types of inquiries that are pulled within a 30-day period, because of the fact that if you're going to look for a new car, or maybe you are looking for a home loan, you are going to be looking for the best rate available. So you might be applying and having your credit pulled by different agencies of the same kind or businesses of the same kind. So the scoring model looks at the time frame and the kind of business for the creditor that pulled the inquiry, and it will not lower your credit score, or ding it as we like to call it, per each inquiry of the same kind within that 30-day period. And that's also part of FACT Act, the Fair and Accurate Credit Transaction Act, just to make it a little more fair to consumers to keep a good credit score when you are out rate shopping. So one of the other questions that pops up quite frequently is credit report discrepancies and how do mistakes get on the credit report. So there are a few different ways that these things can happen. One is you could have applied for credit under different names. Your name is Robert Jones, but you go by Bob Jones. My name is Elizabeth, I go by Liz. So depending on what name I used to open the account or when I applied and my credit was pulled, the information could be listed under a different name. It is also possible that someone could make a clerical error in reading or entering the name or address from a handwritten application. For those of you in the property management industry who are familiar with rental applications that are filled out by hand, I'm sure you have experienced probably more than one occasion where it was very difficult to read what was written on the rental application and decipher that. So it's something to make note of, that getting legible information from an applicant is really important in keeping with accuracy of information. So another way that inaccurate information can be placed on your credit report is if you give an inaccurate Social Security number or if it was misread by the lender. So if you fill out an application and you transpose a few numbers, or the person entering the lender entering your information transposes those numbers for you, then a different number gets reported to the credit bureau, and possibly leading to situations where if somebody does have credit established under the wrong Social Security number that was entered for you, then mixed information could be placed on your credit report. So an account that belongs to somebody that does have that Social Security number could end up on your credit report. It's also possible, though hopefully less frequent, for loan or credit card payments to be inadvertently applied to the wrong account. So we are dealing with the human element with financial institutions and lenders, who places the information on the credit report. And if somebody has a slip up and accidentally places somebody else's information on your credit report. The good news is that something can be done about the inaccuracies that are on the credit report. So the FACT Act that we've referred to a few times now was enacted in 2003, and one of the provisions of the FACT Act is that consumers are eligible to get a free copy of their credit report every 12 months, and that's from each one of the three major credit bureaus: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. So this is the website here, annualcreditreport.com, where you can request that information as a consumer. Each one of us has the same right. There's also a phone number that you can call to retrieve that, and then there's an address that you can submit your request to. And they'll just have a few questions for you to identify yourself, personal types of questions, and it's a pretty straightforward process to be able to get a copy of your credit report from each one of the bureaus. So upon receiving that copy of your credit report, you should review it, make sure that the information on file for you is accurate. And if it's not accurate, then a dispute would need to be filed. So for applicants who apply for one of your rental listings and Checkpoint pulls the credit report, there's a really easy process for them to dispute information. They would just need to contact Checkpoint. So once you provide them with the denial notice because of the information that came back in their credit report, it will direct them to Checkpoint. They'll contact us and fill out a form to be able to get a free copy of their credit report, and then we will initiate the dispute process with the credit bureau. So Checkpoint is not the credit bureau. We're not the furnisher of that information, but being the middle party, we do initiate the process on behalf of the applicant or consumer to make sure that there is a streamlined process in place and the investigation is completed within 30 days. So within 30 days of filing your dispute, the applicant or consumer would have a response, and they would know if the account had been deleted or the information remained on their credit report. So finally, we want to end with some of the credit report features that you'll find on Checkpoint's credit report. And this is just, since most of you are users of our particular credit report, we just wanted to quickly touch on this information, which can also be very useful in your tenant approval process. This section, the credit summary, will summarize the number of public records and inquiries on file, as well as the total number of trade lines and paid accounts on file. So it gives you a nice snapshot, breaks down the information by telling you the total number of trade lines, how many of those are satisfactory, how many of them have been delinquent. And then on the left-hand side, it's another historical value of how many times they've been 30 days late, how many times they've been 60 days late, and how many times they have been 90 days late. In addition to that, it will also break down for you when their newest account was open and when their oldest account was open, and also the number of inquiries that they've had within the past 2 years. Another feature of Checkpoint's credit report that is unique to our format is the financial summary. So the financial summary is just that. It's going to display any past due amounts, monthly scheduled payments depending on the type of account, and also the percent of available credit that the applicant still has. So on the right-hand side, you have the number of account, the number based on the type of account. You have a total balance, and you also are provided with a past due balance, as well as the percentage or utilization that is still available with those types of accounts. On the left-hand side, you have some financial ratios that are based on whatever the scheduled monthly payment that is reported to the credit bureau by the lender, and also the total outstanding balance that is also reported by the lender. So by providing or entering the information yourself, the rent amount and their stated monthly income, the system will automatically generate income to rent ratio, income to debt ratio, and also income to debt including rent ratio. So if you're looking for more information on Checkpoint's credit report, there's a few different ways that you can reach out to us. One is by calling our 800 line where a live customer support specialist can speak with you. You can also email us at info@checkpointscreening.com and let us know if you have any questions or any additional information that we can help you out with. So I want to thank everybody for giving us a part of your morning today. This is actually the first in a webinar series that we're going to be rolling out, so we welcome any feedback, any ideas for future subjects as well. And I hope that everybody had learned something new today.
And so now we have about 6 or 7 questions, I think. If you still haven't submitted your question, go ahead and type it in the question box, and we will try to answer your questions in the order that we received them. So one of the questions here is whether the credit report that is provided by Checkpoint is the most definite information on a prospect at the time of the report. The answer is yes. Whatever information that was reported within the 30 days by the lenders and financial institutions, and whether the courts are reporting, that information is current. The institutions, the financial institutions, are reporting to credit bureaus every 30 days. So if they had the delinquency, that will be counted for next month. I hope that answers your question. Also nowadays, through Credit Rent Bureau, some information on rental history is also reported, and Experian furnishes that data, and we work with Experian very closely.
So one of the other questions is, how does the address get placed on the credit report? Is it from past driver's license ID? And the answer to that is no. It does not come from the DMV records. DMV records are actually confidential information, so there is no database that can be accessed by any person to retrieve that information, because it's personal and it's confidential. So you really have to have a specific purpose to be able to access driving record information and driver's license ID. But the addresses on the credit report get there when you apply as a consumer. You apply for a credit card or some type of account where your credit has to be pulled. Whatever information you gave on your application then gets entered by the lender and also gets reported to the credit bureau. So that's how you end up with different addresses on your credit report. And in some cases, maybe your current address is not on the credit report because you have not applied for a new account since you've lived at that location.
And the next question is actually a really good question about the eviction records that are not showing up in the credit report, and why is that so? Some eviction records show up on credit reports and some are not, so it's not really consistent. I think one of the misperceptions is that eviction records will always show up on the credit report, and that is not so. Especially with the new laws that came to place in the last couple of years, the courts are not reporting to credit bureaus consistently, and therefore Experian, for example, they stopped reporting eviction data completely because of the liabilities that the furnisher carries when they report something that is not current and not updated. The credit bureaus will only report information that they receive consistently from the data furnishers such as courts or financial institutions. So on the Experian credit report since 2009, they stopped reporting eviction data in 2009. You might see the judgments that were definitely judgments on the credit report. However, you will not see such information as intent for eviction or filing, because there's strict rules in place on how that is handled. In this case, we definitely recommend to obtain the eviction search separately, and that's something that we do provide.
Another question regarding the financial summary that can be found on Checkpoint's credit report and what the utilization percentage column, what does that mean? The column with, and maybe we can go back to it. Okay, so the financial summary has a column for utilization here with a percentage, and that would be of the total balance available to the consumer, what percent do they still have available to them? So if we look at the second type, which is an installment type of account, it says that there are two installment types. And the monthly payment for those installment accounts is $844. The total balance of the two installment accounts is $34,000. Actually, it's much larger than that. There is no past due amount, and the percentage available to them is 16%. So that is it's the available revolving credit that they have. Well, for revolving credit, it's 14%. And then we also have a question about the XP that appears throughout this credit report that we've shown for you. Under prior inquiries and also throughout the identifying information, you might have seen that XP appeared as the source. XP stands for Experian. If it was coming from TransUnion, it might say TU, and Equifax, it might say EF or EQ, but Experian is XP.
Okay, and another question is whether this will be available to you whether you could obtain a printout of this. We will post this on our website, but also if you would like to have that in a PDF, you can email us at the email info@checkpointscreening.com, or you can email Liz directly at altretto@checkpoint.com and request that, and we'll be happy to provide you with a PDF format or a PowerPoint format as well.
So we have time for a couple of more questions. We'll end with two more questions, and one of them was, what is a charge-off? A charge-off is an account that has been written off by the creditor due to delinquency. So after a period of time, you go past 30 days past due, 60 days past due, 90 days past due, up to 120 days past due, and you can actually the creditor can write it off as a loss and submit the payment history as a charge-off, meaning that money was not collected, and so they were handed a loss due to that.
Also, there was a question whether you can give a credit card credit report to an applicant, and the answer is yes. In fact, we are required by law to give them a copy of the credit report. However, as a courtesy service so that Checkpoint provides to our clients, you can provide them with adverse action letter, and that will have our information on the letter, and it will provide them with our information, and they will contact us, and we will provide them a copy of the credit report. However, if they are requesting it right then and there, then you can print out the consumer copy from your system and provide them with that. And because by California law, if they paid for their screening report, they have a right to have a copy of that.
And then the final question, is there a designated agency wherein a landlord can report bad experienced tenants and a landlord can go to find bad tenants? There are different databases, private databases that have been set up with the ability for property managers or rental owners to submit bad experience or problem tenants to. Checkpoint has a confidential database with problem tenants where our clients can report that information to us. And if you'd like more information, you can reach out to us by email or phone.
Yeah, and we'll let you know more details about that. So at this point, I think that we're out of time. We do have a couple of questions that we were not able to answer. We do have 3 minutes. Do you want to pick a question?
Okay, so someone has a question about how to opt out of offers that are sent to you in the mail after you make a purchase of a certain type. Your information can be shared with other agencies. Credit bureaus can, by the type of accounts that you have on your credit report, also share that information, and there's certainly an opt-out feature. I don't have that information on hand, the number that you would need to call.
Actually, there's a website that you can go to
Okay.
and just enter your information, and again, we don't have it on us right now, but if you contact us, we will provide that. I did it personally, and it actually worked really well.
Yeah. So stop all of those annoying offers, basically.
All right, so looks like we have to wrap up because we don't want to take more of your valuable time. Thank you very much for attending today and being with us here. If we did not get to your question, please reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to answer that. And as Liz mentioned, we would appreciate your feedback. You know where to find us. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Enjoy your Wednesday.